Thank you for this kind invitation, and it's a wonderful opportunity to me to be with you, and it's an honor to me also with David and Rosaria, and both of them are excellent researchers. We have very limited number of participants. We are a small group. Please, we can use it, and it's perfect opportunity not to be so formal. If you will have some idea and something will be unclear for you, please stop me and we can discuss about it. And what I follow in my presentation is open some sensitive and interesting topics, what can be important to you for your career and for your publishing experiences, and at the same time use it as a bridge for our discussion and reduce your stress with opening sensitive issues like authorship with your supervisors and citation of your bosses and things like this. And I think that we have only one chance and only one tool how to manage with this and how to deal with these issues, and it's to speak about it and try to go between these rocks and find the best solution. And the best solution, it doesn't mean that it's prefabricate. It's about process, and sometimes it's about negotiation with authors and editors. Where to start? I would like to start with very simple but important thing. Editors are not your enemies. The purpose of editor is to help you to improve your text and to publish the best science. That's the purpose of editor. And I know that I'm perfectly aware the fact that your perspective that editor is somebody who is on the opposite side, on the opposite bank of the river, and who sometimes restricted you and sent you very unpleasant feedback, and there is very little space how to manage with this feedback. But on the other hand, what I want to open is and introduce you that there are some written rules, and there is necessary to follow these written rules, but there are also a lot of unwritten rules, habits, and your introduction and your insight into these written and unwritten habits and rules increase your chance for successful publishing at the end. A couple of words about ISAJE. ISAJE was established in 2000, means 15 years ago, and the spiritus agens of this activity was Professor Griffith Edwards. And the main purpose of ISAJE, International Society of Education Journal Editors, is exchange of our experiences, because editor is only human. We have also emotions, and we have also solved a lot of conflicts with authors, with colleagues, and we have to manage with all of this situation. And the purpose of this society at the beginning was exchange of our experiences and improve and uniform a little bit our work. At the same time, we found that there is no possible to sustain on this position and provide only education and training each other, but also involve more target groups, and especially we found that the second target population are early career researchers, PhD students and young postdocs. The main platform what we use for communication are our annual meetings. Last was in Budapest 4 weeks ago, and at the same time we have 4 working groups. You can see these working groups and leaders, and I will touch it later a little bit. At the same time, it's very important, and I will link my presentation with our website, because you can find all of these documents and materials on our website. It's homepage, ISAJE. As I mentioned, originally we had only one target group. It was about editors, but as I mentioned also at the second time, we decided that there is necessary to work with early career researchers and young authors. Originally we spent a lot of time and provide to each other trainings and workshops based on peer review strategies. It means that by the way, I'm the youngest editor, and my colleagues are usually in age 60 plus. It means that I'm not typical representative, and a lot of my colleagues are professors, former heads of departments, and well-experienced researchers. Sometimes we have to speak about very sensitive issues, and I will touch it later in connection not only with editor but also with you as authors, like how to manage with completely new phenomenon like predatory policy of some open access journals, how to distinguish predatory journals and don't waste money and time with this category of journals. Declaration of conflict of interest. It's not so easy in time of alcohol, tobacco industry, gambling industry, and now also cannabis industry. It's changing from day to day. We try to manage with issues like terminology, which terms we are using, and how to avoid stigmatizing open access and publishing studies sponsored by industry. By the way, 8 years ago we had a perfect presentation by Professor Stanton Glantz, who is a cardiologist from New York, who presented a very exciting study about analysis about tobacco industry sponsored research from 70s at the beginning of discussion of stopping smoking on boards in aircrafts. And it was very interesting to compare data, original data and published data, and corruption in this area. And sometimes we have to solve very, very sensitive and unpleasant situation because of corruption in this area. Example, and you can use attachment number 1, is for a better idea and insight what we are solving and how we try to help you, is why it's important to distinguish predatory journal. Maybe better than predatory journal is to speak about predatory publishers, because for instance, if you will find on the list that some journals are signed as a predatory journal, the publishers change it from day to day, and they call the journal in another name and they continue it. It means that it's better to speak about predatory publishers than journals, because it's wasting your time. It means that, for instance, reading instructions, it's not only about a couple of minutes. Instructions are sometimes about 6, 8, 12, maybe 20 pages, and it needs a lot of time, and if you follow these instructions you waste a lot of time if at the end is not publication. At the same time you have to introduce the journal. It means read website and manual, and if you waste this time it's not effective. Wasting your money. It's big discussion during the last 2 decades about legal shift money from governments, from science to private companies through open access journals. And it's a big issue because we are not speaking about 2 or 3%. We are speaking about 10 to 15%, yes.
Maybe I'm learning more, but I was wondering, what is a predatory journal?
Yeah, I will introduce you with it later. We are speaking about fake journals. We are not speaking about peer-reviewed real journals. We are speaking about fake journals, but present themselves as a scientific journal and offer to you opportunity for publishing, and at the same time, at the end, there is no chance for scientific paper because the journal is not scientific journal. It's only way how to take the money from you, and that's all.
I get a lot of those, because obviously I've published a few, and they send me your fantastic work and come into our journal, and it's normally about $500 to publish, which you wouldn't pay.
Yeah.
You just don't pay.
The more you present as well, the more likely you are. I've received recently for presenting at a big psychology conference about 4 or 5 of those, and the journals sound scientific, and they say you're fantastic public, and they give you lots of promises, but you have to distinguish them. I'd be often quite sceptical of. I contacted David straight away and said, "What would you make of these?" But you need to be sceptical of invites like that.
By the way, sometimes it's very difficult to distinguish these journals because the information are sometimes very correct, very sophisticated, and the style is completely similar, same like normal scientific journals. By the way, now on the list there are more than 600 fake journals. It's a huge phenomenon. It's massive. We are facing with a situation that it's real about not only conflict of interest. It's a real legal way. It's on the border for legality. How to take the money from young authors, and not only young authors, because sometimes we have experiences with very well experienced authors, and they pay for it, and at the end the paper was not correct scientific paper. I will speak about it later. What the problem is that no chance to achieve a scientific paper because the journal is a fake journal. These journals are not in indexing system, not in databases. They don't have impact factor. On the website and in manual you can find the information that they have impact factor. In reality, they don't. How to distinguish these predatory journals? As I mentioned, sometimes it's pretty difficult also for professors and for experienced researchers. The main feature is that the journal is not in indexing system. It means that if you check Web of Science or Scopus, the journal is not there. The journal is not on positive list in the system by Thomson Reuters. It means that there is no impact factor in reality. And be careful, because impact factor is a very general term, and now you can find sometimes constructs like RG factor on ResearchGate. It's also impact factor or something like impact factor. And be careful with using this and understanding of this term, because, for instance, they have impact factor in their own system, not in reality in the system by Thomson Reuters, in a real impact factor. Some other strange information and things. For instance, there is no editorial board, no peer review, or very formal peer review. For instance, some of these journals, there is no archive. You publish the paper, and there is no possible to find it. There is no archive. Acceptance time. For instance, there is possible to have accepting paper during 24 or 48 hours. In reality, of course, it's not possible, because it takes weeks, months, what is necessary for preview, real peer review. And at the same time, the acceptance is very fast and very formal, and including that it's perfect text and no necessary to change it. And at the end, we accept it and you can pay, and that's all. You can find these journals, but not all of these journals. It's only about journals what were identified as a predatory journals on this website. And what is very important, maybe you have experience with emails and offer and giving opportunity for publishing in our wonderful journal, and you as a researcher and well-known researcher and things like this, and we would like to inviting you for publishing in our journal. Please be very careful with emails like this, and check the journal, check the website, and check databases and list on Thomson Reuters.
Can I ask a quick question? Do you ever is it normal to get invites from real journals? So is that likely to happen?
Yeah, sometimes some journals use it also.
So don't dismiss it straight away. It might be real.
It's completely on you how to distinguish and check it. If it's correct journal, that's normal and everything is all right, or not.
Okay.
I think it's up to you to try and find out if the journal is viable, because, for example, publishers may have a special edition of a journal, and they may invite certain special papers for that. That's quite common. But yes, these invites, these personal email invites, they tend to be much more personal. They've seen a presentation of yours, they really like your work. They tend to be a bit less believable, but it can be very difficult to distinguish.
Okay.
By the way, we live in electronic period. It means that your name is on the websites of your institutes, your name is on the first 1, 2, 3 papers, and they have software what take your names and send and address email addresses and disseminate these emails and this offer for inviting for publication. There is necessary to be careful with especially with these emails, and some journals are really like predators. They send it for 5 times 10 times and again, and some invitations looks perfect. On the attachment you can find some text, and especially I want to sensitize you on this criteria for determining predatory open access publishers. Please be careful. Not all open access journals are predatory journals. There are some journals and a lot of journals, open access journals with very high quality and normal preview and normal work and follow all criteria what we have for scientific journals. For instance, Harmony Action Journal. It's normal journal with normal peer review. Everything is all right, and it's open access also. And more journals became open access because we have, as editors and publishers, we have a problem with money, with income. And open access is chance for sustainability of the journal. The problem is that for you it's not easy to distinguish normal open access and fake open access journal. In this document you can find and read all criteria what we have and what we use for definition what is predatory journal. And I would like to sensitize you also on this website, and this is the, as I mentioned, BELS list, and again on the list are more than 600 journals now. The problem is that if we identify the journal change the name, and tomorrow is about completely different name, and they continue on. Trainings and education activities developed by ISAJE. I will introduce you step by step with 5 areas where we have some activities. First is publishing addiction science. I have a second edition and I will speak about it later. It's for you as an example. It's a hard copy of second edition, and now we are finishing the third edition. Education documents on our websites, ethical rules, questionnaires for authors, guidelines and things like this. At the same time we develop and provide some trainings and workshops like this, for instance. And we collaborate with NIDA, ICAR and some other universities and institutes, e-learning lecturing and products and online tutorial what we have for students from low-income countries, what is one of our interests. At the same time we are a not-profit organization and we provide all of these products for free and sometimes only for travel costs, and a lot of my colleagues giving lecturing and giving workshops and providing workshops on many universities, and it's very easy and available. First point, publishing addiction science. As I mentioned, it's second edition. Now we are finalizing third edition, and good news is that with publisher we have a contract that the price for this third edition will be really low. And it will be available also for electronic devices, and it will be very, very available. It's publication what was written by editors for authors or potential authors. That's the main purpose and target of this book. There are some more generic issues. For instance, publishing ethic and ethical rules, authorship, formal procedure, how to write, and how to prepare manuscript and things like this. There are also some very specific issues, how to choose addiction journal. You can change and exchange the term addiction to prevent, and it's completely same, and you can use it. Very specific conflict of interest in our area, like tobacco industry sponsored studies and things like this. At the same time, there is a special chapter about position of authors from not English-speaking country, what is completely different position. And my own experience was very frustrated, and sometimes it's pretty difficult to be nobody and starting from zero, and at the same time this disadvantage is that English is not your first language. At the same time, there are also a lot of differences between English writing, English printing journals and national languages, national journals. It's very different space and profiles. In the monograph you can find a lot of examples and additional materials. All chapters are available on our website. now, and this is about second edition, and you can download it for free in PDF, and all 14 chapters are available in full text. It's example of PDF of chapter number 1. How to choose a journal, what is very important chapter, and it's only example for addiction science. And for instance, you can find more than 115 specifically addiction journals, a lot of journals. By the way, I can avoid a question why 1884 it was establishing of addiction, our top journal, and since this time you can find this period, and now we have again 115 journals. The dominant group are English printing journals, but on the other hand, of course, we have a lot of national journals, and we have a problem with identification of these journals in reality. I can give you example in connection with the journal. If we are speaking about impact factor, there is no strict rule that impact factor is only about international English printing journals. For instance, Spanish journal Ediciones, they have impact around 1 point something, and what is not so low in our area, and it's you can publish in Spanish language, and very similar is with Sucht in German language, in German journal. It means that it's not only, impact factor is not only about international journals and only about English printed journals. Another example, how to choose a journal. I listed a couple of questions what are you facing before starting of your work. National or international audience. How to formulate name of your paper, of your manuscript, because attractiveness is not so easy. If you think that something is attractive, it doesn't mean automatically that it will be attractive for your colleagues and for colleagues from other countries. You can find sometimes authors who have a special skill that change and translate the text for more attractive variant. Or you can find sometimes that, for instance, if you publish, plan to publish paper about hepatitis C in the group of injectors in the Czech Republic, it's not attractive for international journal. But the same issue, if you collected data in Tajikistan or Uzbekistan, it's completely different. And it can be same methodology, same project, but it's different if you try to publish and submit it into the international journal, because it's about attractiveness. It's different skill. How to think about your issue, about your topic, and how to translate it into the more attractive position, more attractive point of view, because you offer your text to the editor and you try to sensitize him or her that what would you like to say, it's interesting and it can be interesting for your colleagues. Language, as I mentioned, it's not logic and it's not automatic that only English paper is possible and achieve the impact factor. You can publish it in Spanish language, German language, and you have some journals, of course, a low number, but there are some journals with impact factor, and you can publish it in a different language. Disciplinary or addiction or prevention specialty journal. It's also very questionable, because sometimes you can find journals what prefer preventive research. For instance, drug prevention and education. It's a good example of journal with profile. Yeah.
I wanted to ask, can I publish the same article, for example, in Lithuanian and a national journal, and the same article in international journal in
Perfect.
English?
Thank you. It's a very sensitive issue. In reality, it's duplicity. But if you publish your paper in your national language and try to publish it in English in international, we spent a lot of time in discussions that we lost a lot of very interesting papers, very interesting ideas, because it was published in different languages, Russia and China and some other countries. And we have a problem because there is a big gap between this knowledge and these ideas, and how to bridge this gap, and how to avoid duplicity in publication. Now we have an unwritten rule that it's possible. It means that if you send this information to the editor, that it was published in your national journal, and it's translation, and you edit something and change it and make it more attractive for international audience, it's possible. For instance, we also you sometimes publish the paper from international journal to national journal in full text translation, because it's a problem. Our rule, our purpose is to make these ideas available, and sometimes it's not so easy to say that it's duplicity, but on the other hand, honestly, it's a little bit threshold. If you say, and if you inform the editor that it was published in your national journal, potentially it can be a problem. On the other hand, it's better than don't say.
I did that with an article published in Britain, and then the American Journal of Public Health. I modified it slightly 2 years later, but gave the copy to the previous editor, and he was happy that it was amended enough, been published 2 years earlier, so it was published in the American Journal of Public Health then.
Thank you. Advice number one is be open. It's better, and you can avoid the conflict of interest and troubles in connection with duplicity and things like that, because it's a relatively big problem, and it can produce a lot of troubles for you if editor contact your boss and institute. Be open with it, and I think that is better, and sometimes it's better to have frustrated situation and firing of your manuscript than being silent that it was published. In my I had also a very unpleasant conflict with two journals as an author. We conducted a small project on early memories, and we tried to introduce our colleagues with early memories as a tool for diagnostic, as a diagnostic tool, and as a tool for psychotherapy. It's about two different perspectives, but on the other hand, it's in both versions, it's about early memories as a tool, and we had to introduce people in both papers about early memories. And we had a conflict that editors sent to me feedback that it's about duplicity, that I use the same text, and at the end we had to do contract between two editors and me as an author that that's correct, and I have to introduce the reader with early memories, and there is no possible to use different terms and yeah.
Sorry, can I just follow on with one more thing? There's a lot of researchers from high-income countries do research in low-income countries, and then the research is internationally published but not accessible to the low-income countries where it was done. And I'm just thinking, already in this case of Cambodia, the language is Khmer, and there's very minimal journals there, but it's about knowledge translation back to the country.
Yeah.
So for my interest, I want to publish it internationally, but also to be a good researcher, you need to keep it in the country. So I'm just wondering, is there ways around that? Is it direct translation that would be the case there, or?
Thank you. It's also a perfect question and point. Some journals, for instance, help authors with translation and with terminology, and they have a special language editor, for instance. That's, by the way, that was purpose why we decided to develop online tutorial for people from low-income country, because the gap is so deep. On the other hand, for people from a higher income country, like you and your colleagues, it's very attractive to conduct research in these countries, because it's very attractive issue for international journals. It means that it's about sharing data and joint publication, and it's perfect and probably the best opportunity how you can help your colleagues from low-income country. It means help you because of your English, and at the same time because of your experiences and better communication position with editor. It means that the best thing what you can do if you would like to help your colleagues is publish with them together, and at the same time it's also about increasing your chance for successful publishing. Sometimes you can find a situation what can be very strange, that if editor and journal is interested in your paper, they do a lot of things. They help you with terminology, with English correction and things like this. And sometimes you can have a perfect paper and about interesting issue, and they fire it. There is no possible to avoid it. And again, it's about how do you present it, and how do you speak with editor, and at the same time there is no possible to go into the conflict with editor. I will speak about it later, but communication with editor is very special genre category, and explaining and conflict with editor is not a good strategy. And we mentioned a little bit the culture and area differences, and it's about attractiveness, and it's about your decision where it can be and for whom attractive. Also exposure opportunities. For instance, if the journal is available in some libraries, for instance, you can find around the world special libraries, edition libraries, and it can be very attractive if the journal is available for more readers, because it's about potentially more citations. H-index is one of the construct what is necessary for your career, because if you will apply for new position, higher position, better position, you have to provide H-index, and it means that we are speaking about that the need citations, and availability of the text is very important criteria. Chance for acceptance is also a very important point, because if acceptance rate is lower than 50%, it means that firing of manuscript is a habit. Be careful with this acceptance, official acceptance rate, what journal use on a homepage usually, because they don't count pre-selection, for instance. It means that editors do pre-selection of manuscripts. It means that some papers are not going automatically into the peer review. It is stop and send back to the author, and no real peer review. Why? Behind this decision is a very simple situation. We have problem with peer review with high quality reviewers. It means that we have to save reviewers, high quality reviewers, for higher quality papers. It means that if the quality of the paper is manuscript is pretty low, we save our reviewers. It means that expel the manuscript.
Is it only quality, or is it also possible that they just don't like your topic?
It's not possible to say that that's completely impossible, but on the other hand, the rule is only low quality, not interesting issue. But on the other hand, I have to say honestly that some journals don't like some issues. Some editors have problem with some constructs, and for instance, if you send preventive a paper about prevention into some papers, it can be different, and the reaction can be different. For instance, I know that my colleague can be conflict with me, but my own experience is that if I submitted a preventive paper into the edition on continent, it's different reaction from editor in US. But it's about, we are only human. And at the same time, it's not only about preferences of editor, it's also about profile of the journal. International Journal of Drug Policy, for instance, they prefer only original writings. They don't like reviews, systematic reviews and things like this.
They're very transparent as well. So when you're choosing your journal, they might have very strict criteria for journals they're looking for, articles they're looking for. So it's up to you as well to not send it to a journal that may be not quite right for your paper.
By the way, 2 weeks ago, I sent email to Gary Stimson. Gary, please tell me, we try to finalize the paper about systematic review, about output evaluations in therapeutic communities. Is it interesting for your journal? Answer was quite clear during 2 hours. No. We prefer original writings. Sorry.
I think it's important when you are targeting, because when I first published, the Francis report was coming out. So when I targeted the journal, I knew that this report about leadership in the NHS was coming out. So it was actually the cover story for the journal. So timing is also important.
Absolutely.
And I knew that the journal was really interested in culture and leadership.
Yeah.
And that was exactly what my paper was about. So,
by the way, you as an author is in so difficult situation that, for instance, if journal published completely same topic 2 issues back, no chance for acceptance. But there is no possible to know about it. The journals are sometimes, and editors are sometimes in very difficult situation, because H-index of the journal about impact factor, and of course everybody says that impact factor is misusing and abusing of impact factor, but everybody use it. And we receive money because of impact factor, and it's very sensitive situation, and sometimes some decisions can be questionable. Back to this issue, please read journal profile. It can be very important information to you, what is preferred and what the journal usually accept. At the same time, before writing, please list the last 3-5 years and see if they published something similar idea and area, and what it was. It is very important, because, for instance, if there is some rules, unwritten rules and style in the journal, and you submit completely different manuscript, as a enough known author, decreasing your chance. I know that now this advice can be questionable, because we speak about originality, open mind, things like this, but on the other hand, honestly, at the beginning, with first 3-5 papers, try to regulate you, and better is to follow the norms of the journals and to be in average, not to be completely out of the norms. It's better. I know that it's questionable, but on the other hand, that's reality. Wow, yeah, sorry. Yeah. Indexing and impact factor I mentioned a little bit, but also practical matters. For instance, you are under pressure with your grant, and you have 4 months for finalizing of your report, and you need accepting of your manuscript. And if the journal has a long period for peer review and you know about it, don't submit it, because you waste time and there is no chance to have in time final decision. That's very practical. And more you can find on attachment number 1. The third example, citations. I listed some questions, what are you facing, and you can react on it in your mind. And just one, let me use just one example. Sometimes we are, as a doctoral students, young postdocs and workers in team, we are under pressure that your boss, your supervisor, press on you with citing him or her. That's normal. In a lot of countries, that's normal. At the same time, you are aware of the fact that it's very problematic, because, for instance, this publication is not available, for instance, is not available in English. At the same time, the editor will assess it, and if you cite your boss, and your boss, it can be professor in Prague, and in Prague everybody knows him, but out of Prague is no good. And if you cite a lot of works by him and send this into the international journal, wow, big problem for you as an author. Education documents is second area where you can find on our website some examples of good practice and some advices, like Farmington Consensus from 1997, questionnaires for authors, examples of guidelines and things like this. At the same time, we try to improve translation practice of keywords. You have to define keywords for your paper, and sometimes it's pretty hard which term you use. For instance, some journals, some editors have a problem with term like harm reduction. In some journals, it's very questionable to use harm reduction because they don't like it. You have to use public health intervention. Sometimes you can find this special unwritten rules, but what is a higher problem is stigmatizing. Another example, if you conduct research targeted on output evaluations, impact evaluation and clinical research, and you have patients who are tested with urine test, and we sometimes use the term dirty patients because of positive test. Sometimes some authors use the term dirty patients for manuscript. Of course, it's a problem because it's stigmatizing, but sometimes you can find some other examples of stigmatizing terminology. Sometimes you can very difficult dealing with some terms like, in English, addiction, dependence. What is better? Drugs. Everybody knows, and usually that drugs means illegal drugs. But in the US, if you need medicaments, you go into the drugstore. It's not about illegal drugs. And a lot of traditions in Russian language, narcology, as a name for our area. But narcology is not only about narcotics. It's a very low number of drugs. Sucht in German language. We have a lot of difficult terms what we use. Misuse, abuse, and use. In attachment number 4, you can find some advices in connection with these topics, and on our web you can find the documents on papers and publications. Trainings and workshops, I will go through it fastly. We develop some training modules and activities for students and early career researchers. We try to link the chapters from the journal, documents, and trainings. It means that we link it together, and it's about very similar topics. I mentioned a little bit very sensitive issue, authorship by PhD supervisors, boss of the project, and things like this. The trainings are on very different levels. I mean that we have some trainings for pregraduate students, PhD students, and postdocs, and different models. I mean 1 or 2 days, or summer school. Sometimes we provide a summer school on some universities. What we are trying is to offer these models and these outputs to universities. It means that it's free, and we offer it to our colleagues to adapt it as a course. For instance, on my faculty we use it, and we have 2 courses where we use this publication and these documents, and it's normal course with crediting, ECT credits. You can find more information on seminars and workshops part on the website. If I mentioned authorship credits, I listed some questions. What are you facing as a students and as a team members? And sometimes it's pretty difficult because, for instance, you share the data with your colleagues, and who's the author? How to cite the database, for instance. At the same time, what about research protocol? If your supervisor is author of the project and you only participate, you solve very particular area, particular issue, but on the other hand, you participate on a bigger project. Who is the author? Who has to be on the first position as an author? For instance, I have a contract with my PhD students that if they publish it, and if they are leaders of writing, and I'm only participating and giving advices and feedbacks and things like this, they are the first authors. But it's not so automatic. On some US universities, for instance, I have experienced that supervisors want to be on the first position, and sometimes they ask that student is not co-author. And it's very, very questionable, and it's behind the border. But on the other hand, what I would like to say, that it's about negotiation. It's not so clear and it's not automatic. Please check the attachment number 5, are some rules and rights of students. I hope that it's number 5. I have to check it. Yes, authorship rights of graduate students. I think that it's good to know what are your rights and to negotiate. But on the other hand, it's about power and different positions. It means be careful with this issue, and sometimes dealing with this issue can be very, very difficult. E-learning and lecturing. Of course, we have very limited available people and available colleagues for trainings like this, and we substitute our personally through e-learnings. It means that we develop some PowerPoint presentations what are available, some videos what are available, and full e-learning products. What does it mean? That on our website you can find a series of presentations, it's example, and on our website you can find it here. It's for all chapters. It's example, the same issue but with video, and it's Mercedes. It's a full e-learning lecturing where you have full text, you have chapters, you have additional readings, and at the same time, at the end, you can test your knowledge after following the presentation. Online tutorial, as I mentioned, this product was developed for people from low-income countries, and we don't have more money for more students, and at the same time it was exactly, as you mentioned, how to help these people because they have completely different position for publication. And the rule and purpose of the editor, helping editor, is improve the text, advice, giving advice and provide advice and feedback before peer review and helping with language and things like this. By the way, we tested on students from Africa, and Isidore Obot, editor of African Journal for drug and alcohol studies. It was the beginning, and we had a couple of students from this continent. Target population change from day to day. It means that we have to follow our students and colleagues. We collaborate with ICARA, Association of Associations. We had a presentation on ESBRA meeting 4 weeks ago. At the same time, we try to collaborate more with universities. By the way, this is opportunity how to connect activities developed by ISAJE with colleagues from universities. And maybe it can be interesting for you. Originally, people think that traditional study programs like medicine, psychology, social work, that addiction science is only specialization. Now we have more and more specific university addiction programs. It means that it's not about medicine and addiction medicine and psychology and addiction psychology. Now we are speaking about addiction science as a discipline. We have some study programs where they have clinical training. It means that's completely new professional category. We provided with ISAJE, my university, we provided a Google survey, and for instance we found 80 existing university programs, specific addiction university programs around the world. It's a lot. It's new phenomenon, by the way. It's underlined. Last thing is example, and it's last attachment. I structure it that it's chapter by chapter. You can find presentations, videos, and e-learning presentations. And if you will use the link, there is available presentation for you, and it's for free, and you can test it and follow this. And at the same time, you can combine it with second edition. On spring 2016 will be available full text of third edition. Okay, thank you very much.
Lovely. Really useful. Thank you very much, Michal.